First of all, a little bit about myself. My name is Ari Marinovsky. I've been in the e-commerce space for about 10 years now, through various different companies. Companies, in the basement size. Also, companies that have over 200 employees. So all different scopes of e-commerce sales. I've managed hundreds of millions of e-commerce sales, both in Amazon, eBay, Walmart, etc., other sales. Anyways, so everybody that's here is in the reseller track, which means that the most important thing in the reseller track is to make money. And I don't want to oversimplify that. A lot of times, people are getting out there trying to, make a name for themselves, do branding, where profit is not as important. There's customer acquisition. If you're in the resale track, the most important thing is that you're making money and that you track how much money that you're making and that you can find ways to turn your inventory over profitably time and time again and as quickly as possible. So that's a little bit of what I want to talk about, and I want to give a foundational approach to looking at your inventory, to making sure that your inventory is profitable and that you are optimizing your inventory for as much profit as possible. So to start, I'm going to take this with me. The basic formula to sales looks like this. Sorry. Let's turn this into a P. Is a blend of profit and velocity, right? Velocity, otherwise known as run rate or sales rate, or how many units you're selling a day, versus profit. What are you selling the item for, or your revenue, or your sales price? So very simply, if you're going to sell an item for $1,000, and that's considered a very, very high price for that particular item, you might have high profit and low velocity. So you'll figure around here on this scale. And sometimes you could sell an item for $10, which is going to be low on the profit scale. But because it's $10, because it's so cheap, you'll be high on the velocity or sales rate scale. Where we want to be as Amazon resellers is right over here in the middle. We want to figure out how do we find the perfect blend of sales rate, of run rate, and profit. Now, understanding all of this is very relative to a third component, and that's your inventory, or your supply, or your goods, or your product. What we want to do is we want to spin this around as much as possible. And I made those circles bigger because we want to grow. We want to make more and more and more and more money. And the quicker you can turn your inventory around profitably, that's how you're going to grow in this space on a foundational level. Let's take a look at a couple of examples. So say you're selling an average product, and your inventory looks like this. You have 100 units in stock. And you want to figure out, how do I price my item to be able to sell through this 100 units? And say, for argument's sake, and this may vary by reseller or industry, but typically, I use 30 days. I want to sell through my inventory in 30 days, right? The maximum that I want to sell through my inventory is 60 days. If it's going to take me longer than 60 days to buy and sell through this inventory profitably, and I can't achieve that, then maybe that's a product that I don't want to buy. So again, I have 100 units, and I ideally want to be at around 30-day turnover, so let's say that's a little bit over 3 units a day. Let's say that's about a velocity. I want to achieve a velocity of 3.3 units a day. So you have to figure, how do I price my item to achieve that velocity? But oftentimes it's the other way around. As a reseller, you're going to list your product, and you're going to see what type of sales rate am I getting, and based on that, that's how you're going to adjust your price. Price is probably a better term for this. So this is what you really want to do. You want to figure out, okay, I'm looking at my sales. I'm selling about 3.3 units a day, or 1 unit a day, or 2 units a day. If I'm only selling 1 unit a day, maybe I want to lower my price to achieve more sales. Now, what's key here is that these are always going to be correlated. Your price and your velocity, this is your greatest lever to throttle up or throttle down your run rate. Typically speaking, if you raise your price, you're going to sell less, but make more money. And typically speaking, if you lower your price, you're going to sell more. So sometimes, if you have increased supply, if you have 500 units, or you have 1,000 units, you got to be selling a whole lot more than 3 units a day to be able to turn over your inventory well. So this is a basic outline to look at on how you want to move your inventory. Now let's get a little bit deeper. Give me a second here. So what does this all look like? There's really 4 basic metrics that you want to evaluate your inventory by and see how you want to take action on it. The first metric, the first data set is your SKU or your product. The second data set is your sales. The third is your inventory. And the fourth is your margin, or your ROI, or your profit, however you want to call it. If you can figure out a way to get accurate data within these, really these are 3 sets of data based on 1 common denominator, you can make great decisions on all of your inventory. This should really be your dashboard towards optimizing all of your inventory. Let's run through a few examples. I'm going to make one last category, and this is your POA or your plan of action or your action item on what are we going to do with this inventory. So let's say we have SKU A. SKU A is an iPhone, right? And your sales are about 7 units a day, or let's say 10 units a day, and your inventory is 100 units. And your margin is healthy at about 20% ROI. What's a typical plan of action in this scenario? So let's think, my sales are 10 units a day. That looks like probably going to sell like 300 a month, right? I only got 100 units in inventory. I'm making 20%. I think my plan of action over here is going to be 2 things. I'm going to raise my price to lower my run rate, and I'm going to try to restock also. I'm trying to get more of these puppies, more of these iPhones. It seems like people like them. So we're going to raise them, we're going to restock. Let's take another scenario. We have SKU B. SKU B is not as cool. SKU B is a Samsung Galaxy. Right? And it's only selling 5 units a day. And you got 500 in stock. Right? This is actually not that bad. So 5 units a day, figure over a month, that's about 150 units a month. Over 2 months, it's about 600 units over 2 months. We still got that same margin. We're still selling this item profitably. But at the end of the day, it still fits into my 30 to 60 day window. I know it's over, right? 300, right? I got you. So no, so we're overstocked here. So what do I got to do? I got to maybe lower my price. I got to get this run rate up. If I have 500 units, I want to be selling at least 250 units a month, or maybe 8.5, 9 a day. I got to pump up the sales here. I want to get it to about 8 to 9 units a day, that I'm at least going to get it to in this range. Let's talk about another example. Let's talk about item C. Item C is a Nokia phone, right? It's a retro Nokia phone. And let's say my sales or my run rate is about 10 units a day, and I have 500 units. So I'm basically right where I need to be, and my POA in this scenario would be hold. Because I'm selling 10 units a day. That's looking like 300 units a month. So I'm within my 30 to 60 day window. Now the point that I'm trying to make here is that it's very important to look at your inventory in a data-driven way and in a financial way, similar to a stock trader that has 3 options on every stock that he owns. He can buy it, he can sell it, or he can hold it. Similarly, in e-commerce, we have a couple of options. We can raise our price, we can lower our price, or we can hold our price. So we want to make smart decisions. Now let's dive into this a little bit deeper, because this is all sort of surface. Now let's dive into sales a little bit deeper. Obviously, to understand sales a little bit better, you have to look underneath the numbers. So there's a couple ways to look at sales. What I like to do is I like to look at the past 3 days, the past 7 days, and then you can go past 30 to give you more of a macro approach. And based on this, you're able to see what is your aggregate run rate, and also you're able to see what are the trends, right? So if I was sold, over 30 days, if it was selling really well, and now I see over my past 7 or my past 3, it's tailing off, something's the matter with my SKU. I got to take a look at it. What are the trends? Why is it trending down? Is it maybe it's a seasonal product that it's out of season? Maybe there's competition, either on the ASIN or in the catalog against my item. And sometimes you'll see things that are trending up. Maybe my item is doing better than it's done over the past couple weeks, and maybe I need to start getting more. So this is very, very important to be able to spot trends in your sales data. So when you're downloading sales data, and again, everybody uses different ERP or sales tools, it's important to get as much data as possible, and I would recommend getting the past 3 and the past 7. And just to dive into this a bit deeper, past 3 is going to give you your most recent trend, and you generally want to do this in the middle of the week so you get a good amount of weekday sales. You don't want to do it on a Monday, coming off a Saturday, coming off a Sunday, which are usually slower e-commerce days. Past 7 is going to give you the entire week, right? So it's going to include the slow weekend. It's going to give you a really good sense of what my weekly sales rate is. And past 30 is going to give you, a good sense of what this SKU has done over the past month. I just want to add one important point over here that some people may miss, and it's crucial to understanding what your true run rate is. In my industry, a lot of times I stock out on products and then I stock back in on products. And sometimes I won't account for that when I'm looking at my sales. And I may, if I'm looking at past 30, I may have only had this item in stock for the past 20, right? So when I'm looking at it and I see that I sold, 200 units over the past 30 days, but I'm out of stock for 10 days, maybe my true run rate, had I forecasted and planned correctly, would have been 300 units. So it's important to calculate your out-of-stock days when you look at your sales rate. And just to make that a little bit clearer, you look at a month's time, and you had the inventory in stock Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, for the most part during this week, and then this week you were out of stock for 3 days, and then you were in stock, for the most of the month, and then you also had a gap over here where you're out of stock. All these days that you didn't capture sales add up and are going to have a big impact on your report. So you have to make sure to account for this when you're looking at sales and sales trends. Another note on sales and sales trends is it's very, very important to dive deeper into the data on sales and see why is it not selling. Right? There's so many reasons why a product is not selling. And if you can properly investigate and identify why a product isn't selling, then you're going to figure out what you can do to solve for your gap and to solve for your slowdown. Or sometimes you're going to have a product that's selling really well. If you can investigate and identify why it's increasing in sales, maybe you could replicate that and do that with other products. Maybe it caught a couple of 5-star reviews. Maybe you're ranking better in organic search. Maybe you used certain marketing levers either on Amazon or off-site that are kicking in, that are driving sales. Maybe there was an article that came out about your product that spiked sales. So it's very, very important to look at the trends and look at the data. Another thing to look at is page views. And figuring out if your product is getting page views, but it's not getting sales, then obviously there's an issue with conversion and your product is either not compelling or your price is not compelling. One of those two things are not working out. If people are looking at your item and saying, I'm not really interested, then that's an issue. If you're not getting a healthy conversion rate according to your page views, and figure this is, page views, you can, if you even converting at a 1 to 2% clip, that's still healthy. But if you're getting thousands of page views and very little sales, then something is wrong, and you need to take a look at either maybe there's some bad reviews, or you have a not compelling product at a not compelling price. And usually, if you're able to look at that in a healthy way, you're able to find, hey, there is a range where this product will sell. There is a price where this product will sell. And I use sometimes the example to my team, we sell cell phones. So nobody is interested right now in an iPhone 3, right? It's a pretty old iPhone, right? Nobody wants to buy one, right? They came out with the iPhone XS, right? Nobody's interested. So the question is, nobody's interested in an iPhone 3, but at what price? Nobody's interested in an iPhone 3 at $100, but maybe somebody's interested in an iPhone 3 at $5 to give a toy for your kid to play with. Maybe $4. Maybe $4. Maybe then you have the perfect blend of compelling product and meets a compelling price, and you can generate some sales. That's why page views is such an important thing to look at and try to identify, what's going on, why is this not selling, how do I get it to sell, and how do you identify a trend? And then you could obviously use other levers to get things to sell. We spoke about using price as a lever, but there are other levers that you can use to get your product to sell. You can use, sponsored products. You could try to, get your cousins to hook you up with a 5-star review, and then ask another cousin, and then your friend, and with different IP addresses. You can try to get better content or better images or a better title. Those are all things that are going to help drive your conversion. Another important component is always look at where your product is ranking in organic search with the popular keywords that any normal customer, be the customer, right? If you're a customer looking for the product that you're trying to sell, try to find it and see where you rank. If you're on page 2 or page 3, there's an old saying, the best place to hide a dead body on the internet is page 2 of search results. You like that one? So if you're not there, you know, most customers on Amazon, they're going on page 1, they're scrolling down maybe a bit, and if they're not finding your product, you know, either they're buying something else or they're moving on with their day. So it's very, very important to know, where does your product rank in search? So that's really, hopefully that gave you a good idea in reference to sales. Now, in reference to inventory, there's 3 data points that you need to capture in reference to inventory. And they're pretty simple, but sometimes via reporting, they're hard to capture. But if you don't capture all of them, your reporting can be off. You want to capture your FBA inventory. You want to capture your in-house inventory, things that are physically in your warehouse. And you want to capture your inbound inventory. And once you have a sum or total of all of these 3 inventory warehouses or components, you can look at what is your true financial investment in this SKU or product, right? But when you only look at one, and I see a lot of people do this, they just look at, you know, what I have in FBA or what I have in in-house, and they ignore inbound, they ignore what I have on a PO, what do I have coming in. You're not going to get a true picture of what the inventory value is. In regards to margin, and this may seem super obvious, but some people make this mistake. You have to look at what is your cost of sale and always deduct that before you calculate your margin. And what I mean cost of sale is when you're selling a product on Amazon, you obviously know before you sell that product that Amazon's getting their commission, right? Amazon's getting their money, you know. They got employees. They got trying to move to Long Island City. They're getting their money regardless. So that's got to go into your cost of sale. And you obviously need to ship your product, right? You got to get your product from your warehouse or Amazon's warehouse to the customer. So shipping is also a component to cost of sale, and those need to be automatically deducted when you're calculating margin to truly understand what you're making on your money. And then lastly, we're talking about plans of actions. There's so many different variables, right? There's so many different things that can come into play with your SKU, right? And a lot of times, as a reseller, everybody knows this. You know, it could be that, you know, other people have inventory, or other people lower the price, or I'm not getting the buy box, and you know, maybe I just need to lower my price to capture sales. The most important thing to look at is, you know, what is your page views, what is your sales, what is your buy box percentage, and then deeper, what is the landscape of this product right now, right? Is this a popular product? Is this trending up, trending down? And also, what does the landscape look like in terms of my competitors, and how much inventory do they have? And that's going to allow you to make a better decision on how to take action on that item. But one of the most foolish things to do is to just say, hey, I'm not getting sales, or I'm not getting enough of the buy box. Let me just lower the price and try to capture as much sales as possible. If you're doing that irrespective of this formula, you're just going to lose money. You're going to lose profit. And there's a lot of sellers on Amazon that take that, you know, buy box or else approach, or take that, you know, race to the bottom approach. And honestly, that's foolish, right? You're leaving money on the table. If you can still get a healthy sales rate, even if some other seller comes in there and he's got, you know, 5 pieces or 10 pieces, and he lowered the price, if you're overall within this window of 30 to 60 days, you know, all right, let the guy come in, do his thing. He'll be out of there tomorrow, and you know, we'll continue selling. At the same time, if you have a competitor, let me just preface this by saying there's a lot of tools out there to be able to spy on other people's inventory and see how much they have in stock. We use it all the time. Inventory Spy is what I use, but there's a lot of other tools out there. You always want to know what your competitors have. And if somebody comes in with 5,000 units at a super low price, you know, someone comes in like, you know, this big, you know, big bull, you know, maybe, you know, if you're not going to lower your price, you're going to be stuck on this inventory for a couple of years. maybe it's time to take action on that. That's why it's very, very important to take a look at the landscape of what's going on with the product, both on the detail page and also on a macro level. So anyways, I hope that was understood and makes sense. And if there's any questions, feel free to raise your hand. We can go over it again. Next thing that I want to get into is what are the common pitfalls of an Amazon reseller, and how do you identify them and avoid them? And the two biggest ones are aging and returns. And we'll dive into both of them. But if you're not accounting for aging and if you're not accounting for returns and you don't factor them into your business and address them properly, you could make money, maybe, but you could also lose a lot of money and God forbid one day go out of business. And I've seen aging and returns be the biggest Achilles heel to any Amazon reseller. And just to give you on a macro sense, the biggest problem with aging and returns is that on the balance sheet, it looks like everything's cool. And it looks like everything's fine because they represent the same dollar amount that you did when you bought them. So you think everything's cool. Your balance sheet's growing up, you're making money, everything's awesome. But when you look a little bit deeper, you'll see that this inventory is aging. It's not moving. It's stuck, right? And it's not worth what you paid for it. And you may be underwater on that SKU. And returns, there may be defective products in your returns. Maybe you haven't figured out a process for how to resell your returns. Maybe the resellability, maybe your item as used, maybe you sell toothpicks and nobody wants to buy a used toothpick. So maybe you can't resell the products after they've been sold. So figuring out how to account for both of these, and if you could do it properly, you could figure out a way to be successful. So let's talk about aging. I'm running out of room on this board. So aging, let's just use a basic example. If you buy 10 products, right? And you buy them all for $10 and you want to make 20% margin, so you sell them all for 12. So you think, hey, that's awesome. I'm buying products, I'm selling them, I'm making money, everything's cool. So if you buy 10 products and you only sell 8 of them, and 2 of them are stuck in your warehouse, one's under your desk, one's in the back, inventory under the stairs, and never got inventoried properly, and it never sold, right? So you bought 10 products at $10, your cost of goods is $100, you sold 8 of them at a 20% margin, so you sold 8 of them for $12, and 2 of them are still stuck somewhere. So 8 times 12, I believe, is 96. These 2 units are stuck somewhere, but they're going to stay on your balance sheet as $10 products. So your balance sheet is going to look pretty cool. Your balance sheet's going to look like this. It's going to look like you have $116 in inventory and cash, right? When you and I know you have $96 in cash when you started with 100, and you have 1 unit under the stairs and 1 unit that you listed that nobody's interested in and is not selling for $12. And a lot of times you can do this again and again, and I fell into this trap where you sell the top 80% of your inventory and the bottom 20% just kind of sits there and accumulates and gets dust, and you move it from the back of the warehouse so you forget about it, so you're not looking at it. And you don't depreciate it on your balance sheet. You're still accounting for it at the same value and the same cost as when you bought it. And what happens is this scenario repeats itself and exacerbates and exacerbates. And you constantly have aging inventory. And this goes back to what we were talking about, this hard 60 days. When you constantly have aging inventory and you only sell over the top and you don't depreciate the inventory that you have, you're going to think that you're making a ton of money, right? You keep on selling the top and leaving the bottom, but still accounting for the bottom at the same value. But what's going to happen one day is you're going to try to sell the bottom of that inventory, and you can't sell it for what you paid for it. And you're going to have to take a huge loss on it. And once you write off that huge loss, and once you realize that huge loss, you realize all along you may have not made money, right? And your overhead may have eaten into all your profit. Now let's talk about returns. Returns, number one, we have to talk about what does it cost of a return, right? A lot of times you got to pay a return shipping label for the customer to ship back that product, right? You got to pay the cost of labor for customer service, for facilitating that return and putting it back into inventory. And now comes a factor of, are you able to resell that return? And how quickly are you able to resell that return to be able to figure out if you're making money? So let's use the same example. You bought 10 products, right? You bought them for 10 bucks, you spent $100. Now in this scenario, let's say you sold all 10 for 12 bucks, now you have $120. But what happened? 2 came back, right? 2 customers were, for whatever reason, they decided, I'm not interested, I don't like this shirt, it doesn't fit me, I'm sending it back. So the first thing is you got to pay for return shipping, right? Which is, a couple bucks each label. And the second thing is what is the value of this return right now? Am I able to resell it? Am I able to not resell it? If it's you're in the electronic space like I am, a lot of times you'll get back a return and it's defective. It doesn't work anymore. And maybe the cost of labor to fixing this product is too expensive and you can't fix it, and therefore you've got to just scrap it and eat the entire thing. So again, if we can't recover the value in these 2 products that came back, we're right here again. We're underwater. We're at $96 and even less when you account for how much you have to pay for return shipping and the overhead associated with processing the returns. Another component to returns is to evaluate, especially for people that sell electronics, is defect rate versus return rate. For certain products, the return rate is less of an issue because you can just resell that product, maybe just repackage it, spit shine it, and sell it again. For other products, even if you have a minimal return rate, if your defect rate is high, you're not going to be able to resell that product and make money. And I'll give you an example from both ends of the spectrum. We used to sell antennas, flat wave antennas. And because of the nature of the product of antennas, they had a very high return rate because a lot of people would buy the antenna and they'd say, hey, I'm not getting coverage because, some people, they're either in an apartment building or they lived in a rural area where there was no service, or for whatever reason, they couldn't get, it was an antenna, it was a basic product. You plugged it into your TV, and you either got reception based on your coverage or you didn't get reception. And it was a $20 product, but at a huge return rate, at a 20% return rate. So every single one that came back, we repackaged and we shipped right back to Amazon and sent right back to FBA. So even though we had a 20% return rate, we had a 100% resellability rate, which we're able to take these 2 units and sell them again, and sell them again. And even though they kept on coming back, even though 20% of them kept on coming back, we were able to get the value out of them. So you still take a hit, right, on the process of them coming back and their labels, etc., but at least we're able to recover the value somewhat. At the same time, we also sold TVs. Now, the TVs had a very low return rate. They only had a 5% return rate. It was much lower than the antennas. The problem with the TVs is that the ones that came back, a lot of them were defective. And if anyone that sold TVs, you know that there's not much to do with a defective TV. You can't really fix the cost of repairing that TV. It sometimes exceeds the value that you paid for the product. And that would make the resellability of that product or that return very, very low. So even if we got back, in a scenario where we sold 100 TVs and we were making margin on them, the 2 that came back, they had a cracked screen or they had dead pixels inside the screen, there was nothing we could do with them. And to compound that, we couldn't even we have to pay to dispose of them because it's electronic waste. We have to pay people to come and pick them up and get rid of them. And they accumulate a lot of space in your warehouse. There's not really much you can do with a defective TV. So that's why it's very, very important when you're looking at your returns to, number one, know your return rate. And number two, your defect rate. And number three, the resellability. However you spell that. Of your returns. And figure out, is this eating into my margin? Is this overall going to be a profitable SKU? Or is this overall not going to be a profitable SKU? Anyways, that's all I have planned for today. If anybody has any questions or comments, happy to talk about that. Thank you very much. Sure. Right. Right. In what sense? So essentially, you're forecasting. So you're saying you have big lead times, right? So your forecasting has to be a whole lot better. So you have to accommodate more margin to absorb that into your lead times, right? So figure if you want to turn over every quarter, you want to turn over all of your inventory, right, and make 20% over on your money. You got to accommodate that into your lead time. So maybe 30 to 60 days doesn't work for you. Maybe it's 90 days, but you have to have that extra margin built in. So maybe you got to be you have to have a 30% margin on your products in order for you to have a successful turn, right? And if the lead times are even bigger, you have to accommodate more and more margin to accommodate for as much lead time as you have, right? So there's always a time value of money, right? If it takes you 6 months to get a product, then you better be making 200% on that product to be able to accommodate for how long it takes you to get it. If it's a low margin item and you have huge lead times and it takes you 45 to 60 days to just get the product, maybe that's something that's not going to be, maybe that turn is not good enough. Maybe you're only making 5 to 10% a year on that product, and maybe you should buy a bond or or put your money in the stock market and avoid that product altogether. But if there is margin there and you could work that into the lead times, then it's healthy. I hope that answers your question. Sorry? So really it's figuring out how often or how quickly you turn over your money, right? So in our scenario, we're looking to make 20% over a 30-day period, right? And we're accommodating for 60 days, which gives us an ability. And what we honestly do is we really allow for 90, because things happen. Inventory is going to age, and we are going to have to figure out how to get rid of it. But the most important thing is that you're turning over your inventory completely every single 90 days at a 20% margin. At least. If you're doing less than that, then that's really poor. And if you could do this, then you could turn over your inventory 4 times a year at 20% margin. And obviously that amortizes and scales up. And hopefully you could increase your equity value by 80 to 100% a year based on that. So essentially, he has a longer lead time, right? So if he's at 90 days, he's got to accommodate for more margin. And again, I don't have a scale exactly, is it 10% a month, and every 30 days it's got to be valued at 10%. Obviously every business has their own cash flow, and maybe for him money's cheap, maybe for me money's more expensive. But basically, if it's a longer lead time, there's got to be more margin. What that is relative to your business. I hope that answers your question. Hey.
I'm selling an item where typically the customer buys a number of items.
Okay.
12, whatever.
Great.
Okay.
So discontinue it. Why sell it?
Is there a way for you to sell it only by the box?
Sure. I mean, I don't know what the product is, but why not just sell it as a 5-pack? And what I would suggest is look at the SKU overall, right? And the sales versus your inventory versus your margin, and the same things apply. If you're making money overall, it's okay, right? And if your average cart size on this product is 4 to 5 on aggregate, then you can eat the onesies and twosies that you're not making money on. If your average cart size is 1.5, then you're not making money on aggregate on the entire SKU, then maybe it's something that you would want to discontinue. So you have to look at it, at the big picture. Are you making money on this SKU, or are you not making money on this SKU? And if you're making money on this SKU, maybe you want to make more money on this SKU. Maybe there's ways to optimize your listing to sell more and more and more. Maybe adding those variations are going to be very attractive to customers, right? Maybe you could price the single unit higher and price the 5-pack in a more attractive way to sort of direct customers to buying the 5-pack. Make sense? Cool. Sure.
So, two-sided question.
Sure.
So most of these strategies, they seem very much applicable to private label.
Right.
But also online arbitrage and wholesale.
Right.
So that's what I've been more involved in lately. And one of the things that I struggle with is knowing whether I should keep sourcing and keep ordering more inventory.
Right.
Right. But at what point do I actually generate enough profit to be able to use the profit to purchase inventory, rather than continuously purchase on debt and credit, if that makes any sense. So you were talking about the 60-day run rate.
Right.
Right? So that's sort of what I'm learning now.
Okay.
Also is being able to sell out 30, 60 days, especially if there's 60 sellers that come on the list.
Okay.
But do you recommend, if I'm not selling it fast enough, do you recommend I just not order anything new and let everything sell out and then use those profits to reorder?
So you're asking really two things. You want to turn over the inventory profitably, and you don't want to be out of stock, because if you're out of stock, then you're not making profit, right? So you don't want to sell through to wait until you have cash to be able to buy more. If you have an inventory that's making money, you don't want to ever be out of stock, ever in your life. You always want to be in stock and making money, right? At the same time, you're saying, do I wait to be able to get money from my sales? You're asking a cash flow question, right? Do I wait to get money? And I would say no. I would say find other ways to get money. Borrow money.
It's a continuous cycle. At what point
right.
does it actually become really profitable? Because I feel like I just keep ordering, and it's selling, which is great, but I keep ordering more.
So that's fantastic. So you have a good problem, right? What you're saying is, sorry? Maybe. I don't know the velocity. I don't know your reordering cadence, right? If your reordering cadence is, very, very frequent, then maybe, where do you fit in over here versus the 30, 60, is it selling out too quickly and you're just waiting for cash? But what I'm hearing from you is you have a cash flow issue, right? Where you're not getting the Amazon sales in quickly, right, to be able to replan. And you're using your credit cards and they're maxing out. So you have to figure out ways to finance your business because you're profitable and you're making money. So separately, there's a lot of avenues for Amazon sellers, if they're making money, to be able to finance their inventory. I can give, right. Yeah, so that's very expensive. That's an expensive loan. I think there's a lot of cheaper options out there. But that's essentially your issues. You need some financing for your business because your inventory is healthy and it's profitable. You just need to be able to get more money to grow your business. Sure. Anybody else? All right. Thanks very much, everybody.